Okay, everyone, welcome. This is our first episode of Cactus and Canucks. So that's my mashup that I put together, Mitchell.
Very good.
So what I wanted
Very
was,
good.
this podcast is for Canadians that visit and invest in Arizona. So I wanted obviously a song that Canadians can relate to.
You didn't have the Littlest Hobo theme song?
You're right. Well, that I think that might alienate some people, and then a little bit of USA, and then of course the Riders. Now it's
Yep.
not totally Canadian, but I am a Sasky, and that's not going anywhere.
There's nothing wrong with that.
So for those of you watching, my very first guest is Mitchell Blair. Mitchell, can you tell everyone who is watching who exactly you are?
I am a longtime Regina sports personality. I'm out of the media now, but I've spent 5 decades as a journalist in Alberta and Saskatchewan. My Saskatchewan time in Regina at 3 radio stations. I have been out of the business for a couple of years, but still keep tabs on what's going on with sports in the city and the province, and in particular the Saskatchewan Roughriders, because everybody loves talking politics and riders. And in Saskatchewan this week, they've had a good dose of both, because there was a provincial election on Monday. And of course, the Riders have a playoff game on Saturday at home, which is something we haven't seen here since the Western Final of 2019, when Cody Fajardo hit the crossbar in the Western Final to prevent the Riders from possibly winning that game and going to the Grey Cup. Of course, the Grey Cup was here a couple of years ago, but the Riders were not in the playoffs that year. So it's the first playoff game that's been played here in a while, and surprisingly, there's not a buzz around the city, but that's another story for another time.
No, to talk about the buzz around the city. I mean, you just said that there was a provincial election. As you know, here in the United States, we're gearing up for an election this week. Could it be possibly that people are just a bit distracted by what's going on? You know?
I don't think so, because, as I said, like the election was on Monday, and the Riders played a game on Saturday at home against the Calgary Stampeders, who was the worst team in the CFL. And due to what was just a crazy ending in a game in Montreal that gave the Winnipeg Blue Bombers a victory, that win by the Bombers clinched first place for them. Had Montreal won and the Riders beat Calgary, the Riders would have gone to the Western Final. There were around 22,000 fans at the game, and it was, a decent night for football in Regina, but it was the lowest crowd they have had since Mosaic Stadium opened. And a lot of people are just sort of wondering what's going on. And I think some people, they went because, with affordability top of mind for everybody, I think a lot of people said, you know what? We don't need to go to this game, even though it could be a game where the Riders finish first, because we want to be either at the Western semifinal or the Western final. But I think there were a lot of people that thought the crowd would still be a little bit bigger. And then the way the Riders came out, and they didn't dress a lot of their top players because they didn't need to after Winnipeg had won the football game an hour previous. The Riders made a bunch of lineup changes. Some of their better players were told to take the night off because they didn't want them to get hurt, and it showed. But the Riders did not play well with the guys they had in the lineup, and they left those that were at the game and those who watched left with a sour taste in their mouth because they're expecting better from the football team going into this weekend against the BC Lions, a BC Lions team that they beat at Mosaic Stadium a few weeks ago, 39-8, but a BC Lions team that looks a lot different this time around because on that afternoon, they had Nathan Rourke starting, and Nathan Rourke was thought to be the Lions' savior this year when he came back from the NFL. That did not work out. Vernon Adams Jr., who was having an MOP-type season, took over the number one quarterbacking role again, and the Lions seem to get their game back together. So it'll be Vernon Adams Jr. starting here on Saturday, and I think a lot of people are going, it's not going to be as easy as what it was a few weeks ago when BC was in town. So it's going to be a good football game, and Loretta, you've been around Saskatchewan long enough to know that Rider fans always have that doom and gloom wondering what's going to happen to this team next. And I think there's a few people that are sort of going, you know what, with Vernon Adams quarterbacking and the way the Riders played against Calgary, I don't like our chances. But I think those that are playing that doom and gloom card, they just don't want to recognize that the Riders did not play with the team that they would have had on the field had the Montreal Alouettes beaten Winnipeg, because Trevor Harris would have played, Sam Emilus would have played, who else? AJ Willett, their big acquisition, free agent acquisition in the offseason, would have played. Like they had some of their top players that sat out for good reason because they don't want to get those guys hurt. So I think a lot of people overreacted to what happened here at Mosaic Stadium last week in Calgary. Basically, took the doors off the Rider wagon.
So when you say that they didn't play their top people, and you and I had a discussion a little about ticket prices before we started and stuff, you think maybe that was a factor in kind of, how?
Yeah, it's sort of odd because some people will tell you that, especially those from maybe an hour outside of Regina, they'll make that trip in. It's not a problem for them. For those that are coming in from a Saskatoon, a Prince Albert, a Swift Current, they sometimes will stay away if there's a reason to. And certainly this game, as I said, if they're making the investment to come to the playoff game, I don't think they wanted to come to Regina 2 weeks in a row. There are fans that are upset with ticket prices. There are fans that are upset with what they perceive to be the game day experience is not what they want it to be. There are people that are angered over concession prices. There are people angered about the prices that you have to pay at the Rider store to get official team merchandise. Some of these complaints are valid. Some of these complaints I don't think are. Saskatchewan is known to have fans that I've always, joked that on the license plate it should say, "What are we going to bitch about today?" And the football team usually gets a brunt of that. And as I said, is some of the criticism valid? Yes, it is. Is some of it a little over the top? Yes, it is. But they love their football team, but they love supporting the football team. And we're seeing that there are less and less fans going to games for whatever reason. There's not a lot of young people at the game anymore. And I'm in that older demographic that the CFL is trying to market to. There are, younger kids that aren't going to the game for whatever reason. I know I had somebody tell me a couple of weeks ago that he was going to go to the game with his son on a Saturday night, and his son wanted to stay home and watch the Ohio State Buckeyes and the Oregon Ducks on NBC that night because he's a big college football fan.
Yeah.
If you're losing young people to NCAA college football, you've got a problem. But that's not a Saskatchewan Rough Rider problem. It's a CFL problem because you have to find a way to engage that younger demographic to the CFL game. And that's tough. A lot of us play fantasy football, NFL fantasy football. You really can't play fantasy football in the CFL when you only have 9 teams. It's pretty tough to do.
What's the CFL doing differently now that to reduce the the younger fans not watching than they were 10 years ago.
The NFL has taken over. That's why the CFL doesn't play games on Sunday anymore. You'll notice that this game is being played on a Saturday. The semifinal and division finals used to be played on Sunday. The Grey Cup will still go on a Sunday, but there's thought that the Grey Cup will move to a Saturday night, which I think would be great because then you could whoop it up Friday night. You could do whatever on Saturday. You could go to the game and party it up after Saturday night, fly home Sunday and not miss a day of work.
Yeah.
If you wanted to. But the CFL has lost some of its younger demographic for a variety of reasons. The NFL doesn't help that because the NFL's social media machine is just marching at a pace that other leagues just can't keep up with. And I think it hurts the CFL. The CFL does a lot, but I think they could be doing more. When it comes to new Canadians, I don't know how many new Canadians know about Canadian football. I don't know how many teams do things with new Canadians that have come to our country who are more known to things like soccer and cricket. You should be trying to get them to know what the Canadian football game is all about. And as I said, I think the CFL has done a poor job of that. That sort of trickles down to the teams. Some teams have adapted a little bit. Others haven't. The CFL put out a release this week saying that attendance was up 1% this year. Attendance grew 1%. Well, I grew 1% too, Loretta, over the last year. That's
how
not
is
good.
The attendance at the other, we've always had more attendance than the other teams.
Yep.
But how have the other teams fared?
The Winnipeg Blue Bombers are by far and away, and people in Saskatchewan that are going to hear this are going to be mad, but the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are far and away the envy of the CFL now when it comes to the fan base. When Jim Hopson was the president and CEO, what's that?
That's all Bob Petrovich's fault.
There you go. When Jim Hopson was the president and CEO of the Riders, Jim wanted his team to be the envy of other teams in the league, and he succeeded at that because he knew what to do. He got the people in. Things have changed from when it was when games were at Taylor Field with a variety of things. Some people have said, if you had the blackout, people would return. Well, the days of the blackout are long gone. If you want to watch a football game on TV, you're going to find a way to watch a football game on TV with the streaming and everything else. When I can go to my cable package and get 5 TSN channels and CTV and global channels from cities across the country, you're not going to be able to black those games out here. It's just impossible to do. And the days of the blackout aren't coming back, but the CFL and the Riders, I'm not going to sit here and say the Riders are immune to this, but they have to find a way to get the young fan back into the stadium. And one thing I sort of threw out there, and I don't think it'll ever happen, Loretta, when you were in Regina and you were a little Loretta running around and maybe got your first taste of Saskatchewan Rough Rider football, did you ever sit in the Rider rookie section?
For sure.
That's how kids
got on the grass.
Right. That's how kids got to know the Riders. Mm-hmm. That's how I got my first Rider experience, was sitting in the Rider rookie section, and we had a blast. And, obviously, mom and dad gave us $5, and now $5 probably couldn't get you a Coke at most venues, but we had a blast, and that's how we learned about the Riders. The Riders need to, and the CFL for that matter, they need to get kids involved in the game again, because those kids are your future customers moving down the road. And if you don't have those people, you've got problems, especially when it's a gate-driven league. But I know the Riders are hoping for a crowd of 30,000 here on Saturday. Right now, I think it's around 26, which is okay with, 72 hours to go before kickoff. But I think the game should be sold out because it's playoff football. Others say if you can get 30,000, that's great. but we'll see what happens.
So let's talk about the game on Saturday. If we're comparing strengths and weaknesses in both teams, what would you have to comment about that?
Oh boy. As I said, the biggest difference for the Lions will be at quarterback, where Vernon Adams Jr. will play instead of Nathan Rourke. Adams has had a much better season than Rourke. They've got some receivers that are very good. They've got a running back that's very good. But that being said, the Riders have a great defense, led by Roland Milligan Jr., who many were hoping here would be the West nominee for most outstanding player. Those division finalists were announced today, and Roland Milligan Jr., who was up for 3 awards, is only getting 1 award out of the West. A lot of people are not happy over the fact that Winnipeg's Brady Oliveira was named the West's most outstanding player nominee. Milligan is the defensive player. He's going to go up against Montreal's Tyrese Beverette, who had about as good a season as Milligan did. And then special teams, he also didn't make it. He led the league in special teams tackles, was a force on special teams. I can't remember who it was out of the West that got the nomination. I think it was BC's kicker, Sean White. Milligan had a great season. Brett Lowther, the Rider kicker, had a 200-point season. You could have maybe argued that Lowther could have been the Rider special team nominee, but the media here that vote on the award went with Milligan, which is fine. But now there are Rider fans up in arms saying that Brady Oliveira should not be the MOP candidate out of the West because it's Milligan. But I think a lot of that maybe is just, it's not our guy mentality.
And what about the turnovers? Any predictions on that?
Well, you know what? It should be. Yeah, turnovers are always going to be a big part of the game. The weather shouldn't be a factor. They're saying on Saturday it's supposed to be about 8 degrees in Regina, so that'll probably be about 5 or 6 degrees at kickoff. I believe the low is just below freezing on Saturday night as it stands right now. So with the game starting at 4:30, weather should not be an issue. I don't know what the wind is going to be like, but it doesn't sound like it's going to be windy. It should be a perfect night for football. So, we're going to have 2 good teams going at it, and what team can create the opportunities and capitalize on the opportunities they're given. It's going to be, as I said, a couple weeks ago when BC came in here, it finished 39-8, and everybody knew with 5 minutes left what the end result was going to be. I think with 5 minutes left on Saturday, I don't think anyone's going to know what the end result of this football game is going to be, and it might be that way right down until the final play. This could come down to the toe of either Sean White or Brett Lowther, the respective kickers on each team.
And how do you think home field advantage, is that going to help us out a lot with those 32,000 people?
Home field advantage is big. No matter what they get for a crowd, it will be loud. The leather-lunged faithful will be out there. They'll make it difficult for the Lions, but I'm sure BC's coming in here with silent counts, and I'm sure they've probably been working out with some crowd noise in Vancouver this weekend. It's not like they don't know what they're walking into, much like the Riders, if they win this game, know what they're going to walk into when they go to Winnipeg for the Western Final next weekend. So right. BC will have their work cut out for them, but we all know the best way to shut up the fans is to score and score often and keep the fans from getting into the football game, because if they can do that, it's a big advantage for BC. But, the first time here, as I said, when the game was 39-8, I think it was the first series of the game. In fact, I think it was the third play. Nathan Rourke went to throw a screen pass to his running back, and he dropped it. But before the ball hit the turf, it got sort of off a knee, off a foot, and it ended up bouncing into the arms of a Rider defensive back, and he took it back for a touchdown. And that got the ball rolling, and BC never recovered from that. So, if the Riders could get an early turnover, an early lead, and get BC behind the 8 ball and get the fans loud, it could be tough for the Lions. But again, if the Lions get the ball to start the football game, or they get, the first time they have the ball, if they move down the field 75 yards in 5 plays and score a touchdown, people are going to be going, uh-oh. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here with 2 very good football teams battling it out.
So you're the coach on Saturday of the Saskatchewan Roughriders. What is your special strategy that you're going to kind of keep at the forefront of your mind to say this could be something that can get us the win?
Well, I think what Corey Mace needs to do is he needs to tap into what this football team can do when they are operating in full cylinders. And he has seen that. And again, what the Riders put out last week against Calgary, that was not the Saskatchewan Roughriders that we've seen the last month of the season. They were looking to end the season on a 5-game win streak. But again, they didn't have some of their top players in the lineup. So, if Corey Mace can find that energy that Trevor Harris will bring back to the huddle, that AJ Ouellette will bring, that Sam Emilus will bring, if they can get a couple of big plays on defense from guys like Micah Johnson and Roland Milligan, the Riders will be rolling. And they can, they'll give BC that proverbial slap in the mouth. And can BC come back and slap the Riders in the mouth? I guess that's what we'll find out. But, when you have the opportunities, you're going to have to capitalize on them. And if that's one thing the Riders have not done well this year, it's they've had to settle for 3 points instead of 7 on many times. And now that you're in the playoffs, when you have the opportunity to score a touchdown, you can't settle for a field goal. Points are at a premium. You've got to put that ball in the end zone. The Lions know that as well. And as I said, I think this is going to be a game that could very well come down to the last play and who has the ball.
Got any score predictions for us for Saturday?
Oh, boy. 26-24 Riders.
I love it. That's what I like to hear. So we're definitely going to, and on another note on the other game, what's your comment on?
I think Toronto's probably playing the best football out of all the teams that are left in the playoffs right now. Chad Kelly has come back, and for those that don't know, Chad Kelly was suspended for the first half of the season because of a sexual harassment suit that was laid against him, and the league suspended him for the first half of the season. But he's back now. He's back to playing at his MOP level. He was the most outstanding player in the league last year. Toronto, I think, will run over Ottawa in the Eastern semifinal at home. They'll get a rematch against Montreal in the Eastern final. And last year, Montreal's defense made life miserable for Kelly. He turned the ball over, I think, 7 or 8 times in that game, which allowed Montreal to complete the upset and go on to win the Grey Cup. I think Toronto right now probably is the best team going into the playoffs. I like Winnipeg. It seems that they might have God on their side after what happened last week in Montreal. I like Toronto and Winnipeg in the Grey Cup final. I think the Riders, if they go to Winnipeg, it won't be pretty for them because games in Winnipeg for them over the past few years have not ended well.
And we know there's a lot of Canadians that are already headed south after Thanksgiving. Yep. Can you tell them how they could watch the game this weekend?
Well, I guess the best way to do that, and I'm just going from what I understand because I obviously am not down in the U.S. watching games. If you have a dish and you can get either TSN or the CBS Sports Network, that is one way to watch the games. The other way, and it's a way that I know a lot of people, especially if they've gone, away to an international destination. I guess the U.S. technically is international. If you go to the CFL website, there you will find a thing called CFL Plus. And if you log on to that, if you go to their page right now, it'll show you the 2 logos for the 2 games this weekend. If you click on one of them, you basically fill out a free account, and then you can stream the game, I believe, off the CFL website. I know a lot of people have used it. It's good. I couldn't tell you if it's the CFL on TSN broadcast that they use, or in the case of the Riders-Lions game, if you will get the home broadcast from the Riders or the radio broadcast of the Lions. I don't know what you get for play-by-play or who provides it, because I know the league doesn't have an independent group that does it. I'm guessing it's probably the TSN feed, because if you have CBS Sports Network, that's what you get. You get the TSN feed. So those are the 2 best ways to listen to the game or to watch the game.
And for everyone in the United States, I will post the link to that. Mitchell gave me that earlier today, so I'll post it and have the recording. We'll send this out to everyone. Thank you so much for coming on today. and giving us your opinion. I know everyone values what your comments are and takes them to heart. So I hope your prediction's right. I hope you guys have good weather. And
well, we should have good weather, and hopefully my predictions are right. All year on Twitter, I made my weekly bets. I didn't pick games straight up as to who was going to win. I took the odds from one of the several books, whether it be Bet 365 or Bet 99 or Bet MGM or whatever. And I'd say take the Riders plus 6.5 over Ottawa, or take Montreal, plus 3.5. I think I was only about 3 or 4 games above 500. So it wasn't a great year. I'm doing much better with NFL picks than CFL picks, but that just shows you the unpredictability of the CFL game, where a lot of games go down to the final 3 minutes before they're decided. And like I said, I think this
Rider games,
Saturday will be the same.
Okay, thanks again. You guys stay warm out there, and have a great weekend. Go Riders.
Not a problem, Loretta. Great reconnecting with you, and best of luck with the podcast.
Thank you.